Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ICG's Digital Academy webinar series. I'm Sally Alsop, and I'm the ICG committee member who runs the webinar programme. So this afternoon, I have to keep reminding myself that it's this afternoon because usually these are run in the mornings. But this afternoon, we're delighted to welcome Levent Yıldızgören. Levent is one of the two co-founders of TTC We Translate and has helped it grow from a single to multi-language vendor. Levent is an experienced English to Turkey translator himself and a Prince 2 qualified project manager. He has over 30 years of industry experience. He is a mentor, speaker, charity fundraiser, and visiting lecturer at Essex University. He was the winner of Outstanding Contribution to Translation Industry in 2015 award. I'm assuming that's an MRS award. Levent is also a published author of Good Business in Any Language and host of Thrive in Global Markets podcast. So in today's interconnected world, understanding your audience goes far beyond simple translation. During this webinar, Levent will help us discover how cultural nuance and linguistic expertise are essential for accurate data, meaningful insights, and research that resonates worldwide. He will share practical strategies to navigate cross-cultural challenges, avoid common pitfalls, and deliver research that stands up to global scrutiny. As usual, there will be a Q&A session at the end, so please do turn on your webcams and raise your hand if you'd like to ask Levent a question yourself or join the discussion, or alternatively, just type your question in the chat box and I'll read it out for you when we come to that part. So probably unsurprisingly, TTC We Translate are our sponsors today, so thank you very much to Levent for that. So TTC We Translate have been bridging language gaps and unlocking global market insights for over 33 years. Backed by triple ISO certifications and expertise in more than 100 languages, they specialize in delivering market research translations that are not only linguistically precise, but also culturally relevant and strategically aligned with your business goals. Serving research agencies, insight teams, and global brands worldwide, they ensure that your digital surveys, questionnaires, research reports, and data summaries retain their nuance, intent, and analytical value across borders. So thank you to TTC We Translate. So before we begin, here are some more events we've got lined for you over the next few weeks. And as another reminder, for those of you interested in our great value sponsorship opportunities, please just reach out to Lucy. And so now I'm going to hand over to Levent.
Thank you, Sally, and welcome everyone. Let me share my screen and we get started. My screen is shared, I take it?
Yes, that looks fine.
Yeah, excellent. Well, again, welcome everyone. And today we'll be talking about how language and culture shape credible global market research. As you know, big brands have been relying on market research for the last 50 years to get regular and rich insights into their consumers rather. Smaller brands also use this, but more sporadically and on special occasions. I'm gonna list a bit about myself quickly, as Sally kindly mentioned those. Today's agenda is quite packed, actually. So we'll talk about why language and culture matter. We'll look at understanding cultural nuance in research, pitfalls beyond direct translation. We'll look at a couple of case studies, the ones that have failed and the ones that are really successful. I'll share with you a checklist, and that could be a practical framework for anyone conducting international research. And as Sally mentioned, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, please let us know. Well, starting with qualitative research, it is essential for brands because it uncovers the deep human reasons behind consumer attitudes, preferences, and behaviors, insights that go far beyond what numbers alone can reveal. In essence, qualitative research gives brands the ability to see the world through their customers' eyes, enabling smarter decisions, richer storytelling, and strategies grounded in real human experience. And to connect with customers emotionally, it is important to reach them in their languages with culturally suitable content. However, this becomes quite a challenge when a brand goes international in multiple countries with different languages and cultures, and sometimes multiple countries in the same multiple languages in the same country, such as Belgium, India. And this makes making the task even more challenging and critical. What is really interesting is that some brands succeed so well making emotional connections with their consumers across the world. And really, how do they do it? How do they use languages and cultures to their advantage? So hopefully there will be some lessons that we can derive from their experiences. Creating emotional connections is so important for brands because that's what creates the customer loyalty. If you look at Nike don't sell trainers, they sell inspiration and empowerment. Dow is body positivity and self-esteem. Airbnb gives the impression of belonging anywhere. And if I book a Airbnb accommodation in Korea, I know that I could walk into a similar experience that I had somewhere else in Europe. And Coca-Cola, happiness and togetherness. All of Coca-Cola's advertisings, commercials, social media is based on being together, the families being together, and they use this concept so well. So why language and culture matter? Neglecting cultural nuance in market research comes with substantial risks, and several studies and real-world cases illustrate the consequences. Well-known brands have suffered significant setbacks due to ignoring local culture. One of the examples is a Target. This is a USA-based huge brand, very, very successful in the USA. So they expanded to Canada, replicating their concept, same in Canada as it was in USA. However, they failed to understand Canadian consumer norms and preferences. And the lack of that cultural adaptation led to a complete market exit and an estimated $2 billion in losses. And that's such a big failure for a successful brand somewhere else. Walmart had a similar experience in Germany. Their aggressive low pricing did not align with German customers, leading to unmet expectations. And the result was plummeting sales and then withdrawal from the German market at a loss of $1 billion. Now, Nando's had quite a different journey in the UK. They entered the UK market in 1992, and originally they were a takeaway. They had a takeaway model, but it was nearly collapsing. They had to close branches. It wasn't working. And listening to their customers, they changed their concept to a mixed service format as it is in today. So customers ordered at the counter, and the food was brought to their table. And this paved the way to their rapid expansion thereafter, and they are one of the household names today. So how to get global insights? Because the global insights require understanding of the customers, languages, and cultures. The main reason for that is customer behavior is culture-driven. And it's not universal. It is driven by deeply embedded cultural values. Things like how people make decisions, what they trust, what they aspire to. Without that cultural lens, we can completely misread what is motivating a customer. The other thing is that language is more than just a communication tool. It shapes how people think and feel. When respondents aren't using their mother tongue, they lose emotional clarity. Translations that are technically correct can still miss the point emotionally and conceptually. The other important point is that data doesn't speak for itself. It needs local context to make sense. A good example to that is a 3-star rating in the UK might be average. It's not horrible, it's not, it's just average. But this could mean totally different in Japan. It could be a subtle form of disapproval. So without cultural context, you're reading the numbers wrong. Also, trust plays a massive role. Participants are far more likely to engage deeply and honestly when they feel the language and tone are culturally respectful. If the research feels foreign or even slightly off, we lose rapport. And if you look at segmentation, culture matters just as much as age or income. Values like individualism versus collectivism can drive purchasing decisions in totally different directions. And this could happen even within the same demographic. Of course, avoiding mistakes is part of it too. We've all seen global campaigns or surveys that unintentionally offended or alienated their audience. That usually comes down to poor cultural awareness at the research stage. Ultimately, when people respond in their own words and in a way that feels natural and relevant to them, the insights are just so much richer and more actionable. And let me say this, when you're working across markets, it's not just about communicating consumers by translating words, it's about transcreation, that is adapting the message to make sure the meaning lands in a way that resonates. Understanding cultural nuance in research is so important. Excuse me. When we talk about cultural nuance, we are referring to all subtle, sometimes hidden differences in beliefs, values, body language, communication styles, and everyday expectations that exist between cultures. And even within regions of the same country, it goes far beyond just speaking a different language. It's about the context, the tone, the gestures, the humor, and even the taboos that shape the way people view and respond to questions. So why is this cultural nuance matters for data interpretation? If you overlook these nuances, we risk misunderstanding or misinterpreting what participants are really telling us. For example, a phrase that seems neutral in one culture might carry strong emotional weight in another. Or a question that feels straightforward for us might make participants from another culture uncomfortable, leading them to hold back their true opinions or give answers that they think is what we want to hear. When we are sensitive to these details, we create an environment where participants feel comfortable sharing openly and honestly. This gives us deeper, more authentic insights. On the other hand, ignoring cultural nuance can introduce bias into our results, distort our findings, and reduce the credibility of our research. It can also make it very difficult to compare results across different markets because the responses might not be truly equivalent. So paying attention to cultural nuance doesn't just prevent mistakes, it is what allows us to deliver insights that are meaningful and actionable.
The study. You work in study.
Yeah. So there's some background. Somebody, I think they left their microphone on. So let's have a look at some gestures that could have different meanings in different cultures. Now, this is an interesting one. Is thumbs up gesture. In the UK, in the US, most of Europe, it means good job or okay. However, in parts of the Middle East, West Africa, and South Asia, it is considered highly offensive, similar to giving someone like a middle finger. And okay sign, okay hand sign. Again, in the UK, in the US, it means okay, perfect. However, in France, it can mean zero or worthless. Even worse, in Brazil, Turkey, and Venezuela, and in some countries, it can be considered as a vulgar or obscene gesture. So something that we are used to ourselves really well, and so easy to do those in our communications, conversations, written or verbal. It's so easy to follow this, but just thinking that it can mean something quite different in a different culture. And there's more. This is a peace victory sign. However, if the palm is facing inward, it can mean totally different in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. And I don't know if any of you have come across this, people doing this innocently because they are doing this offensive sign without realizing it. On a separate point, I noticed that in Far East, people use this in their selfies and photographs to indicate that they are happy. The other one is direct eye contact. In the UK, in the US, to a certain element, direct eye contact is considered a sign of attentiveness and respect. But in some East Asian and African cultures, too much eye contact can be seen as rude, disrespectful, or even confrontational. That's really interesting and really, really confusing. In most Western cultures, nodding our head up and down means yes. But in certain countries, it can mean no. And these countries, Bulgaria, Greece, and certain parts of India, it can actually mean no. And shaking the head from side to side can mean yes. So these examples highlight the importance of cultural nuance. Without understanding these differences, communication in global research can easily go the wrong way. Now, while we're talking about this, I think it's important to mention that certain idioms, and using those idioms, how detrimental it can be to our communications. Bite the bullet, meaning to endure something unpleasant to difficult. And that comes from the historical reference to soldiers biting bullets during surgery. But this can confuse the participants if they are not familiar with this historical reference. Kick the bucket, meaning to die. Again, literal translations can sound strange and nonsensical, and it can really confuse the other party if they are not familiar with that. Piece of cake, meaning something very easy. Literally translating this can puzzle non-native speakers who do not associate cake with simplicity. That's a funny one. Let the cat out of the bag, meaning to reveal a secret. This idiom's figurative meaning doesn't translate well where similar animal-related metaphors don't exist. Last but not least is hit the nail on the head, meaning to describe exactly what's causing a situation or problem. If interpreted literally, it may confuse audiences unfamiliar with carpentry or metalworking metaphors. These idioms emphasize why cultural adaptation is necessary cultural adaptation in research language is critical. Literal translations often lose meaning and risk alienating or confusing respondents. The danger here is that because we are so familiar with those idioms, it can be easily used. Again, same language, different names. This is a pickup truck that we would call. But in Australia and New Zealand, they call this ute, short for utility vehicle. In UK, pickup truck. In South Africa, they call this bakkie. I think it comes from an African language. And, truck is called truck in the USA. Let's have a look at the pitfalls beyond direct translation. Now, this may look weird when you watch it on the screen. Basically, it's not a real campaign. Ford in Belgium, when they launched in Belgium, they had this slogan: "Every car has a high-quality body," and it is badly, not wrongly translated as "Every car has a high-quality corpse." And this was a poorly translated campaign that alienated local customers, creating unintended, disturbing connotations. Okay, Ford is a big company. They managed to contain the situation, but it was at a cost and certain delays in their campaigns. And the damage to reputation can be a lot harder to repair even for large brands. On this point, it's very important to mention something that there's a lot of pressure to use AI and machine translations. If you paste a confidential content into ChatGPT or Google Translate, please be aware that it is potentially stored and retrievable. In some cases, it can even become a searchable online. So if it is indexed, then it will be searchable online. So something to bear in mind. Now, this is my favorite part, looking at the case studies. Dolce & Gabbana is a very famous brand, and they did a campaign for China. China happens to be their third biggest consumer market. they sell a lot of expensive clothing. So what they did this, they were going to do this campaign in Shanghai. So they launched a social media campaign to promote this runway show. And they showed Chinese models trying to eat pizza and spaghetti using chopsticks, narrated by a male voice that used a patronizing tone. And basically, it came across really stereotypical. This created a major backlash in China. It was widely perceived as culturally insensitive, condescending, and offensive, because they believed in China that this was portraying Chinese people as unable to understand or engage with Western values. And if you get a chance to watch the videos on YouTube, you will see what I mean. And it's quite painful to watch those videos, because they truly believe that they were doing a really good job. So what is the result of this campaign? The Shanghai Fashion Show was cancelled. Considering the amount of money and time, sleepless nights that people spent trying to build that show, it was cancelled on the spot. What made it worse, that the major e-commerce platforms pulled the brand's products. There was a massive backlash on Weibo. Weibo is their equivalent of social media. And what made it worse, that there was a sharp drop in sales, not just China, but Asia Pacific region, because in this age of digital communications, word travels fast. So key takeaways. I mean, it's easier to talk about things when it is done, but nevertheless, if a brand like Dolce & Gabbana can do this sort of thing, then it is really worth getting learn the lessons out of this. So key takeaways: cultural humor doesn't translate well across markets. What is playful in one culture can be offensive in another. There was no evidence that Chinese cultural consultants were part of the campaign development. In fact, what happened after the backlash, that their champion in China, he publicly resigned from his position, saying that he can't work with a company who doesn't respect Chinese culture. So that it was clear that nobody in Dolce & Gabbana talked about this to anyone in China. And really, global campaigns must be locally validated, especially in markets like China or any country that has a high context culture. And of course, reputation risk is immediate in the digital era, because word travels so fast. Now, let's have a look at some very successful brands. McDonald's is one of the top global companies in the world. I think they always seem to be either number one or in the top three. Their global strategy is that they adapt menus to local tastes. For instance, I was really surprised in Belgium, went into McDonald's, that was many years ago, and I was surprised to see that they were actually serving alcohol in McDonald's. Apparently, they do the same in Austria, Czech Republic, France, Germany, Sweden, Netherlands, and many other countries. Now, in New Zealand, they started offering Georgia pie. Georgia pie is like equivalent of steak and kidney pie in the UK. And over there it is steak, mince, and cheese pie. I think there's also a chicken version. So in every country, McDonald's offers unique local specialties as well as classical McDonald's items. And you can see the results, how successful they are. For instance, in Hong Kong, they do eggs, sausage, and curly noodles for breakfast. It will be interesting to try. Dunkin' Donuts is again very successful. I think they operate, last time I checked, they operated in nearly 40 countries. And they adjust their offerings globally. A good example is dry pork and seaweed donuts in China. May sound strange to Western European taste, but it's a seller over there. And also on that point, KFC offers afternoon tea in Shanghai. So KFC is not known for their afternoon teas in the UK, but that's what they do in China. Now, I'd like us to look at some practical framework, more like a checklist that anyone can use when they are conducting research internationally. And I'm hoping that that will be useful. We created this based on our experience working with a number of customers. Now, this is about translation of pre-filled data. Workflow, this is really in relation to the translation service provider. And what is the workflow to be used for the pre-filled data? Now, the usual one is the translation followed by revision, but is that the case? It needs to be clearly explained or agreed with the translation company. Adaptations. Is the translation service provider going to incorporate cultural and technical adaptations? Because this will ensure that the content makes sense in the target market. And what about client reviews? Will they, the translation company, will they manage, how will they manage client reviews? It's also vital to understand how they will ensure client feedback is applied consistently across all languages. And do they have, the translation company has a formal complaints procedure? And do they have a specific process for maintaining consistency? Now, if you look at the translation of post-field data, this is the unstructured data, which is the data collected after the field work is complete, such as open-ended responses or audio, video, visual content. You need to ask your provider if they have methods for managing this type of unstructured data. Audio-visual content. If you have audio-visual content, have you discussed the specific translation requirements with your provider? It's crucial to ensure the quality of both transcription and translation for this content. And most importantly, AI and machine translation. A key area to discuss is their approach to AI and machine translation. How do they decide when to use AI versus human translation? And importantly, what measures are in place to handle the limitations of AI, such as with nuances or colloquial expressions? What happens if the AI translation doesn't meet the required standard? Another important point is the qualifications of translators. How does your translation company verify the competencies of their translators? Are their translators based in the UK, or are they based in the target countries where the translations will be used? It is so important to be working with translators who are familiar with the local language and culture. Because language is a live thing, the only people who can really follow this up is by living in the target country. Quality standards is another minefield, but nevertheless, it can show, it can demonstrate a lot of important information for the translation service provider. Ask if your translation company is certified to standards like ISO 17100, which is the translation quality standard, or ISO 9001 for quality management. And if they use machine translations with post-editing, do they have ISO 18587? These are important indications of the level of service that you can expect from translation service provider. Data protection and legal is nevertheless very important. Security. You need to have measures in place to ensure your translation company protects personal data if it is applicable. Ask if they have IT security measures to protect data during transfers and storage. It is essential to have a data processing agreement in place with your translation company. You also need to confirm that, in turn, they have proper agreements with their own service providers, such as freelance translators. So we are coming to the end of our presentation. So let's have a look at the cultural takeaways. I hope you're having a lot of questions in the meantime. The key takeaways: prioritize cultural nuance in all research, because cultural humor doesn't travel well. Local validation, especially in high context cultures like China, where pride and tradition shape consumer attitudes, is so important. And the campaigns need to be locally tested and validated so that there's no place for assumptions. Local stakeholders are essential. Campaigns risk going off track without the input of people who truly know the local landscape. So, thank you very much for listening. And now I'll be happy to take any questions anyone might have. I'll just stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Levent. That was really interesting. Lots of
Thank you.
interesting tips and case studies there. We've got a couple of comments in the chat. Maybe that will start us off. So I don't know, Alison and Anita, do you feel like turning on your cameras and joining the conversation, or shall I just read out your comments?
I'm not sure you can hear me very well. I'm in a coffee shop, so probably best I don't. It may be better if you read it out.
Okay. So Alison says, I remember HSBC had a good campaign based on cultural differences in hand gestures and facial expressions. She noticed them at the airport. Great placement. That's a good comment. And then Anita,
Yes,
are you there, Anita? Do you want to read yours out?
Yes, I'm here. Hi there. That was great.
Hi.
Thank
Hi,
you very
Anita.
much, Levent. No, I was just agreeing with Alison and saying that I still remember from going through Gatwick Airport or wherever I was at the time, seeing the soles of someone's feet as part of the campaign.
Yeah,
and they said that's really, really rude in Asia.
Yeah,
But Levent, just going on from what you were saying, it's so I'm based in Madrid in Spain, and it's crucial that we are given the opportunity to translate the screener ourselves, to translate the discussion guide ourselves, and to see concepts that the local team are involved in translating concepts. Because lately I'm seeing that clients want to send us the screener already translated, and it doesn't make any sense, or even worse, the discussion guide. Local input is so important to make sure that it makes sense culturally
Absolutely.
as well
I
as
couldn't agree. I
linguistically.
couldn't agree more.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone? Anybody else want to turn on their webcam and ask a question of Levent while we've got him here?
I did
Absolutely.
have one question that I wondered if you could expand on. Is you mentioned that Target in Canada, oh no, sorry, Walmart in Germany. It would be good to understand. I understand that there's quite a few cultural problems. It wasn't just kind of the marketing. So maybe they should have done some, I don't know, employee research as well as market research, as well as campaign testing and brand testing. Are you able to
Yeah.
tell us a bit more about it, please?
Yeah. I mean, the main essence that I've got from what I've read is that the Walmart is, their slogan is "Pile 'em high, sell 'em cheap," something like that, and it just didn't work out with the German audience because they have a very aggressive pricing, and it is, they, like they say, they pile them high and sell them cheap. It just didn't work out, and it could be there could be an element of the local competition as well, something that they obviously didn't take it into account. Whereas if like KFC, I mean, KFC has very clear product line in the UK, but in China, in order to compete with other providers, as well as serve the customers better, they offer afternoon tea, which is something unheard of. When I first read it, I thought it was maybe somebody was making a joke or something, but actually that is so true. So I think it is understanding the cultural nuances and what makes the customers connect to the brand. So I think it is that it's like Lego. Lego is a brand that is so successful in all countries. And if you look at their website, in Korea, Korean website, German website, Turkish, UK, it's got that element of making people be part of it and give that assurance that actually that's a quality product. And some brands are get it really right, really correctly, and some brands can't. I think it is down to the understanding cultural nuances, not just paying a lip service, but more like, well, if they like it in my domestic market, why can't anyone else like it? That approach, I think, is not working.
It's interesting that in Germany, Germany is the home of the two British discounters, or they're present in Britain, Lidl and
Yeah.
oh, my mind's gone blank now.
Aldi.
Yes, of course. Alison adds, I read that Walmart fell down in Germany because the extrovert team culture didn't match the more introvert German culture. So maybe it's not just a question of price and volume. Maybe it's also a question of their marketing approach.
It could well be. I think there must be a number of things that and when it's like a car, really. When a car starts going wrong in one part, it starts affecting the other parts. So when there's something wrong, the sales are plummeting or not reaching their targets, then it starts sort of going, taking a kind of snowball effect from that point.
Yeah. So Anita, you've got your hand up. Do you want to come back on that?
Yes, just following on from the different brand names in different countries, which is relevant as well to what you're saying, Levent. The Mitsubishi Pajero, it was called in Spanish, it had to be have its name changed in all Spanish-speaking countries. I can't say here in polite company what that means, but you definitely don't want to call a car Pajero.
Yeah.
So it had to be changed to Mitsubishi Montero. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one. And I think actually, I don't know whether it actually went out into the marketplace as Mitsubishi Pajero, but that's definitely a big need for research with brand names like that.
I think it's the cultural nuances needs to be taken seriously, and not making any assumptions. I think the successful brands are doing that so well. I mean, Apple is another one. They have like product trainings apparently in every branch of Apple across the world, at least for like 40 minutes a day. And it is all about how the locals are perceiving certain things. And I think when they take it seriously, another thing about Apple, all their campaigns are, well, not all, but maybe 75% of their campaigns are locally created, not translated directly from their US current counterparts. I mean, with Germany, it was another one, Wix. Wix, you know, the mantle of, I don't know how do you know, we use Wix for like I got speechless now. But anyway, this Wix means poison, I think in German. So they had to name it they had to write it with W. So Wix is in English is Vickes. So in Germany, they had to name it, they had to write it with W. Otherwise, the meaning doesn't appeal.
Poison. Okay, there are a couple of additional comments from Alison. Yaz in the US versus Yazoo in the UK, and also the Spice Girls had different names in the US as well. So there must be lots of examples where one brand name can't be used universally around the globe and has to be changed. Yeah. Any other questions? Any other questions from anyone? No? I think it might have been Baby Spice, Alison says.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Coca-Cola had to do the same. They had to make their name in China that makes sense in Chinese.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so lots of positive feedback coming through, lots of super things to think about. Thank you from Liz. Very interesting. Thank you from Alison. Thank you. Gracias, merci from Anita. So thank you, Levent, for your contribution this afternoon. It's been really interesting. Lots of useful learnings and tips there for us.
My pleasure.
Okay, and have a lovely remainder of your day, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and do come back and log on for another future webinar or online event with the ICG. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. All the best.